welcome to another episode of the Okanagan Gardener and Forager channel. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my neighborhood. And why? Well, it's September 2020 and right now there are some fires raging along the west coast of North America, and we're not immediately threatened by fires here in the Okanagan right now, but it's very smoky and there's a lot of talk of apocalypse and Armageddon. Plus it's 2020 and there's a lot of stuff that's happened this year. And food security is one thing that myself included and many other people are concerned about. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, why don't I just, and noticing all the things, and why don't I just sort of record it and show people? What I mean by noticing all the things was noticing all the food and medicine that's just all over the place, almost everywhere I turn in my area. And I'm going to do quick, just show the thing and have a little bit of a description in some cases, but really the point of this is kind of just to show that if you're looking for it, you can find food almost everywhere. Some of these plants that I'll be talking about are wild, and some are just escaped, like this rhubarb here. And maybe it's arguable that it's on, I would argue that it's on the boulevard. And if you can see at the top of it, there are some seeds which I harvested some of last year and planted and grew into several rhubarb plants which I was able to give away. Right here on the side of the road, a hazelnut tree. And hazelnuts. For anybody who's willing to come along and find them. Here's a species of mustard on the side of the road. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident this is Loesel's Tumble-Mustard, which is edible. I think it's the Loesel's. There's Lily. Because of the downward pointing hairs near the bottom. Has a basal rosette of leaves. And these seed pods on the way up. And the yellow flowers. Yes, mustard, like the sauce, the condiment. Here along the side of the road, one I only just recently noticed, blue elderberry, scientific name Sambucus caerulea, something like that. And this is edible, but also has it's used in has a lot of medicinal properties. I could do a whole thing just talking about this plant alone. Right here, walked by it literally hundreds of times. Didn't even notice. Here it is. Here on the road, right next to the elderberry, which is on the boulevard, was some large apricot trees, and those are on somebody's property, so I wouldn't go foraging for them without permission. But this year, I did get permission. I just went and asked them and said, hey, you've got a lot of apricots there that are all falling on the ground. Mind if I have some? And they were more than happy to let me pick some of their apricots, which I turned into jam, and we dried some too. Now moving in a little closer for this one because I don't really want to give away the exact position, but if you were to find it, then, you know, you could probably come and have some of these plums because they're not mine, they're just on the boulevard. These are the Italian plums, or the ones that, for us, we turn into prunes. They're delicious. They're very edible, and these, of course, well, maybe they were wild at some point. Typically these are grown in people's yards. We've got a couple of them. These ones are just here on the boulevard. They've, I think, just spread out from somebody's yard, and I have pruned this tree before. It's clearly a little overgrown, but with some pruning, it's really producing a lot of fruit. Here's a ditch along the side of the road full of a bunch of useless weeds, right? No! Look! Dandelion. I don't really need to go into it There's a lot of videos out there, and maybe one day I'll say some more, but dandelion is very edible. The whole thing. Leaves, flowers, roots. Here. Chicory. There's some further on. Full of chicory. Clover. And some mallow. And okay, it's a ditch, and maybe next to a road isn't really where you want to go and eat and harvest from, but the point is, everywhere you turn, edible food, edible and medicinal. There's some view of the apocalypse, the smoky apocalypse. Normally, you'd be able to see a lake over there. But fear not, there's food and medicine everywhere you turn. Further on down the road, I walked by this thing quite a few times before I noticed it too. A crabapple tree. And yeah, it's pretty overgrown and it could use some pruning. Maybe, if I lived, well, I do live close to it, maybe I will prune it, I don't know. But it's still producing lots of good crab apples, which of course are delicious, and they're high in pectin, so they can be used to make crab apple jelly or added to other fruits if you wanted to use them to, you know, for their pectin. But here it is on the side of the road, just growing here. Just a pause in my walk. The view of the apocalypse, the fiery apocalypse, and I'm not trying to make a joke, because it is, you know, serious. It is unhealthy, and there's a lot of big fires, and I saw a lot of stories in the media and other places about an apocalypse, and well, it's 2020 and things are a little weird this year. So I was thinking, like, just looking around and just seeing all the food and all the things, you know, and there's concern about food scarcity, supply chain disruption, those sorts of things, and I'm concerned about them too. And so to maybe put my own mind at ease, but also everybody else if you're watching, man, once you start looking and seeing it everywhere you turn, nature is just providing an abundance that's really hard to imagine, at least for us where we live here. And yeah, okay, we're not in the city. And are you still living in a city? Anyway, back to the tour. I've just stepped off a little trail in our neighborhood, and I'm in a little opening, and surrounding me over there, Saskatoon berries. This is another Saskatoon berry bush. Here, choke cherries. Here, Oregon grape. There's some burdock over there, a whole big patch of it. I'll tell you a little more about that later. Behind it is a choke cherry tree. It's huge, full of choke cherries. Some more Oregon grape down there. And on and on. And I haven't walked down there yet. I've only just been in this little area. I'm here with my furry friend who gets covered in weeds if I go into this stuff, so I have to carry her this far. Anyway, every direction, edible berries, wild and free, and some smoke. Here, just off this trail, there doesn't look like there's too many fruit, too many apples on it, but there's an apple tree down there. And there's a bunch more stuff. There's a bunch of burdock down there and some mullein and probably a lot more, but here I am. Again, here I am with Lily wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so I'm not going down there just yet, but I'm sure I'd find a lot more. Just about 10 more steps down the path. Red-Osier Dogwood, and those are edible too. They don't, taste that great, but they are edible. Indigenous groups would use them, eat them, mix them with sweeter berries like Saskatoons. And that looks like a great big chokecherry tree off in the distance there, and some more Red-Osier Dogwood in front. A little further along, Oregon grape, and much more. Here is a plant many of us would be familiar with, burdock, from those burrs. Those sticky burrs that are so much fun to throw at other people, but not so much fun to have stuck to you. Well, if you didn't know, I'll tell you. Oh, there's a thistle. Parts of that are edible too. Burdock. The young leaves and shoots can be cooked or eaten raw, but are kind of bitter and unpalatable. There's a younger one. But the stems and the flower stalks are also edible, and you just have to peel them, and then on the inside the stalks are pretty good. Sweeter flavor. And the roots are also can be used, roasted and ground up and used as a coffee substitute, similar to chicory or dandelion. And I think I'll talk more about mullein later in another video, but these are mullein, these great big tall things. They make these yellow flowers, stalk. They're not really edible, but medicinal, and they have 2-year growth. So the first year looks like that. I'll come back and I'll talk about them a lot more in depth. And then the second year like that, and then the third years, maybe you can see some off in the distance there. They're like dead by then, but the leaves are medicinal, and what could be done is they can be collected, dried, and smoked, and it's good for upper respiratory infections and things like that, or it has been used traditionally for that, and which might be a good idea. Believe it or not, maybe smoke can be healthy. Maybe not that kind of smoke though. The smoke you can see in the distance. Here's some common plantain, which is edible. The seed pods, edible. The leaves, young leaves are edible. But what I like most about it is to use it in if you're somewhere and you get a cut and or whatever, some sort of a problem, take the leaves, chew them up and put them on it. It can suck out poison, or it has some antibacterial properties and can speed healing, astringent properties to help close up the cut. So they're pretty great. And like a tiny, tiny little catnip, which is also edible and medicinal. There's a real nice plantain. Looks strong, full of seeds. The seeds are totally edible. You can pick them off and eat them as you go. And I'm so impressed by how plantain grows just out of this nothing, soil. Ooh. Some wild spinach there. I'll show you some nicer ones later on. Here's a black hawthorn tree. The haws are all, dried up and past their prime now. But those spikes are not, and they can still do their damage. You can really, at least for me, the things that make it easy to spot this tree is the leaves, their shape, and those thorns, giving it the name hawthorn. Oh yeah, the berries are edible. They don't taste that great, but they are edible. Another black hawthorn, a few of them. You can see it a little better what the haws look like, the berries. They're called haws. And of course the shape of the leaf. Up there you can see an apple tree. wild apple tree. Some burdock. And coming along, I'm skipping over a bunch of plants that probably also have some use. Hawthorn. Man, those thorns. Oregon grape. And here, another apple tree. Just sitting here. Obviously you could use some pruning, and you know, a lot of them will have worms in them, but we were out for a walk with some friends the other day and we ran out of water, but I went and took some of these apples and ate some pieces, and it's probably better to get your water from fruit a lot of the time anyway. Yeah, I had a knife, and I know where a fruit tree was, and so our thirsts were quenched. And there's a whole bunch of Oregon grape. And those are Saskatoon berry trees, but the Saskatoons are all gone. These ones here, the spindly ones, not the big ones. Here's a close-up of that apple tree, and yeah, it's pretty overgrown, hasn't been taken care of in some time. Virtually all these apples, except for maybe the ones that I pick, are probably all just going to fall and rot. You know, here's a nice little patch of wild spinach. There's a couple ways that I recognize it. One is and a lot of them can have very different looking leaves, but the leaves kind of have this arrowheady shape, and also, if you can see, they kind of have a white like fuzz on them that you can wipe off a little bit. I don't know if you can see it. They have a little bit of a white fuzz. Anyways, they're edible, the whole thing, pretty much. Younger tastes better with the leaves. You can put in a salad or cook them. And the seeds are also edible. And they might be growing in your garden, and you might be pulling it out because you don't want it. But it might be more nutritious than some of the other stuff in there. So one more shot of the valley off in the distance. If you can see it through the smoke, it looks like Armageddon, but I don't know if it is. But if it is, you can find lots of food to make it through. And other than finding food, maybe grow your own too. So if you liked this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And maybe you could put a comment there saying if you've found food in your area. And either way, I hope you liked it, and thanks for watching.